My first overall favorite play is going to be DeAndre Ayton under 32.5 fantasy score. In this video, you guys are going to find out why, along with 4 other plays. And I love DeAndre Ayton because this is a horrible matchup for him. Going against Memphis. No, I'm totally kidding. Guys, we're comparing market values. Everything that I'm going to show you in this video is going to show you how to become a profitable sports bettor in the long term, especially with these 5 overall picks tonight. The entire breakdown of this video is going to revolve around market value. And I'm going to show you why his fantasy score is a little bit too high on PrizePicks, especially when we peel back all of the projections across the industry. So what we have here, and we're going to be focusing on a tool called DGFantasy. DGFantasy takes all the player prop comparisons across all the sports books, puts them into the PrizePicks multiplier, and then figures out what that projection would be if these sports books set a projection for their fantasy scores. So for instance, let's take a look at the near even prop lines on DeAndre Ayton. So for instance, his points line is set to 12.5. All we're doing is we're heading over to the calculator here, and we are multiplying 12. Not we, the software is multiplying his point total 12.5 times whatever the multiplier is. It's just 1 times 1 obviously equals 12.5. And then we're also multiplying the rest of his near even player props. Like, let's hypothetically say that his even player prop line on the sports books is 11.5 times 1.2, because the multiplier on PrizePicks is set to 1.2. So we take 1.2 times 11.5 plus 12.5, and we do that for all the player props across the board. So we obviously have to take into consideration his turnover percentage, his steals plus blocks, and his assist line. But adding those all together, what we're doing is then heading back to the DGFantasy optimizer. And what we're showing you is taking all the math that I just showed you here across all sports books, taking the even player prop lines. They are giving us an approximation of what their fantasy score would be on PrizePicks if they had a fantasy score market using their multipliers. So doing the math that we just did exactly and automatically under the hood here on the optimizer. So based on the even player prop lines on Barstool and on BetMGM for DeAndre Ayton, Barstool is setting their fantasy score to 30.7, and also BetMGM is as well. So DeAndre Ayton across the board here, his projection should be set to 30.7. And then when we compare that directly back to PrizePicks, we're essentially just saying, hey, his projection is a little bit too high on PrizePicks. It's 1.8 points higher on PrizePicks than it should be according to the sportsbook knowledge. And we also have another way to view this. If we head over to the fantasy score tab, we can actually see the raw projection in totality, so it's just easier to view. DeAndre Ayton is 1.8 off. It's also slightly different for players that are a lower tier. So for Luka Doncic, obviously, it's easier for him to get fantasy points in general. So the needle isn't going to move as much if there's that large of a discrepancy. So 1.9 difference for Luka Doncic isn't really that much of a difference compared to DeAndre Ayton, who's obviously a lower tier player, when we compare 30.7 directly back to 32.5. Hence the reason why we're giving this a 55.4% odds to hit on the under. And we have 2 additional data points here, 30.7 on Barstool, 30.7 on BetMGM. I trust those 2 data points, especially since they're agreeing with each other, over PrizePicks' projection of 32.5. And just looking back at historical evidence over the last week or so, NBA has been setting their PrizePicks projections for fantasy scores a little bit too high. So we're seeing all these very aggressive projections, and I'm looking to take advantage of them. Guys, I can almost guarantee you that this Ayton play is going to be bumped by the end of this video. And the reason why I'm selecting a 5 flex slip on PrizePicks is because PrizePicks 5 flex slips give you the best bang for your buck overall if you're playing the long-term game on PrizePicks. So keep in mind that PrizePicks does not alter their payouts regardless of the type of combination of players that you put into a slip. If I choose 4 or 5 random players here and I change the less than, over thens, it does not matter the type of whatever combinations that you decide to select for all these players, PrizePicks does not alter their payouts, meaning it's a fixed payout platforms. This is different from traditional sportsbooks, whereas if you place different player props into a parlay on traditional sportsbooks, they alter their payouts. And they do this because there's a mathematical advantage behind every single player prop on the specific projections that they're offering. Whereas on PrizePicks, they just simply offer the projections without showing you the American odds. It's very different, and a lot of sports bettors don't know this edge. So as sharp sports bettors, we have to find the break-even percentage, the true break-even percentage that's going to make you mathematically profitable in the long run. A lot of people like playing two-man powers on PrizePicks, and that really is a bad idea. The reason is because when you break down the math behind both of these legs, these lines are so heavily juiced that it's really insane to be entering two-man powers. And I'm going to further prove this to you by selecting a two-man power and showing you the break-even percentage. Let's just hypothetically say, for the sake of simplicity, that I'm just a casual sports bettor and I'm hitting my legs at a 50-50% odds to hit, meaning that every single slip that I enter on PrizePicks, regardless of the type of slip that I'm entering, I'm hitting each prop at a 50% hit rate, because that's usually the average for any sports bettor, right? I'm not breaking even, obviously. That's how PrizePicks makes their money. They're putting in some added juice. If you guys don't know what juice is, you guys should check out the other YouTube videos on my channel. But that's how these sports books and these DFS apps make money in the long term. They're throwing on a percentage juice on every single type of player prop that they're offering on their platform. The juice for PrizePicks is 9.9%. The added tax, the added gratuity that they're charging for every single player prop is around 9.9%. Which means every single prop that you're betting on, you have to beat that slight edge of 9.9% gratuity or juice, whatever you want to call it, that they're charging per player prop, per slip, right? So in order to do that, we really have to break down the math and look at the payouts overall and find the best bang for our buck slip type. And it's not the two-man powers, because if we look at this, and I only know this because I've done this a million times, if we look at this and say, hey, like if we're hitting every prop at a 55% hit rate for two-man powers, I'm still not breaking even. We're showing you the true win percentage if you're hitting each one of your player props an average amount of 55% of the time. You're not going to break even. You're just not. Showing the ROI of minus 0.9. So round that up to $1. Every single time you put $10 down on a power play for a two-man power and you're only hitting at 55% of the time, you're losing $1 every single time. But let's hypothetically say I hype this all the way up to 57.75%. I'm now breaking even, meaning that you have to hit each one of your legs over a 57.75% of time to break even in the long term for two-man powers. But if we switch this over to a 5 flex and we only hit at a 50% hit rate, we're not breaking even there as well. What about 52%? How about 54%? Not quite there. How about 54.26%? As you can see here, the EV is a lot better, and overall, you allow for more room for error here if you select a 5-man flex slip opposed to a 2-man power, because you only have to hit each individual leg at a percent hit rate, a 1% hit rate of 54.26 opposed to 57.75%. Hopefully that makes sense, because they're showing the EV that you get per leg at this 54.26% hit rate here, opposed to a 2-man power, where if we're hitting at a 54.26%, we're losing money long term, and quite a lot actually. So referring back to our PrizePicks optimizer, where if we go to this filter here and we select a 5 flex slip type, you're getting average implied odds as we go back to our sheet here of minus 118.6. We rounded up on the optimizer to minus 119 implied odds. We're looking for better hit rates or better odds of minus 119 fair odds, which equates to 54.26%. So if we select this drop down here, all of these plays are qualifying as profitable sports bets by entering on PrizePicks. And these types of player props, if you enter them consistently on PrizePicks, you will remain a profitable long-term bettor by simply comparing back to market value. So anyway, that is why we are selecting 5-man flex slips, because they give us the best overall bang for our buck in the long term. So as we were refreshing our optimizer and looking through all the market value, Joel Embiid popped up for the exact same reason. Based on the market, based on the even player props that are being offered here on these sportsbooks, DraftKings, Barstool, BetMGM, it looks like there's some slight disagreements here between DraftKings. It's completely fine because he's relatively low on all these books. His PrizePicks line is still too high at 54. So I'm going to be taking the under in 54. People see the name Embiid and they're like, oh yeah, you shouldn't hit the under on superstars. None of that matters. Like none of that's relevant to the actual projection that we're being offered on PrizePicks. We're trying to either hit the over or under of a certain projection, right? We don't care about the name. Like, what if Joel Embiid was set to 70? Would you say the same thing? No, logically, that doesn't make sense. So hitting the under at 54 is a sharp play on PrizePicks. Same thing with DeAndre Ayton. So those are my first two favorite plays. And again, just going down the line here, it's very self-explanatory. We have 3 price points here, agreeing that Davion Mitchell is too high here on PrizePicks. So we're going to be taking the under here on Davion Mitchell with his 22 fantasy score. So these are the first 3 picks that I would be entering on PrizePicks because they are mathematically profitable in the long term. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to some normal player props that have a lot more book support, just because I want to give you guys some more variety here. But as you can see here, Darius Garland, he's being offered with heavy juice on the under, set to 2.5. It's a 1-to-1 comparison across the board on PrizePicks. or on the sportsbooks rather. So as you can see, we're getting this at minus 119 implied odds as discussed earlier in this video, but across the board, none of these implied odds are as good of plays when comparing back to PrizePicks, because again, we're getting worse bang for our buck here on the sportsbooks. So just comparing that price point, comparing those projections across the board, Darius Garland under rebounds is a very sharp play on PrizePicks and a profitable play. And last but not least, we're going to go down here to Zach LaVine, all above that 54.26% mark. Another sharp play, heavily juiced on the under here, 2.5 under turnovers is what we're going with here for Zach LaVine. And these are my overall favorite plays. I know nobody likes unders, but nobody cares about your feelings because all we care about is making money in the long term and beating out PrizePicks by beating their juice, their hidden implied odds per leg. And hopefully you guys learned something from this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this content. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course smash that like button for all of our future NBA content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day, and let's cash.